All right, so this will be part 2 since my computer needed to restart. All right, so what quadrant is 2 pi over 3 in? 2. That's kind of just knowing your unit circle. All right, in what quadrant is cosine positive, but tangent is negative? This is that all students take calculus if you wanted to remember it that way. Cosine is positive in quadrant 4. So 4 is your answer then. Reference angles, the denominator just matches. So your reference angle for 7 pi over 6 is pi over 6. All that is. So do you see how I'm picking problems that cover the material, but they're not like the super difficult ones? Okay. So here we're going to need to draw a triangle. Quadrant 1, since everything is positive, it says cosine is 4/5. Now, this is not on the unit circle, so we're back to SOHCAHTOA, adjacent and hypotenuse and opposite and all that. So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then I gave you cotangent is 4/3, but would we have known this was a 3 anyway? Because 3, 4, 5, like work with me on that. Okay. And then we're being asked for cosecant. Cosecant means you're doing the reciprocal of sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So this is going to be hypotenuse over opposite. So 5 over 3. Yeah. All right. Then we have a couple that we're converting. 50 degrees. What do you multiply by to turn it into radians? 180. Pi over 180. Very good. So the zeros cancel and you get 5 pi over 18. Does that reduce? Just if it reduces, you have to do that. No, that doesn't. So we're done. All right. 10 pi over 9. Same thing, but you're going to multiply 180 over pi, and the pi's cancel out. Now, the way I coached you through doing this way back when was take the 180 and divide by 9 first, because if you divide first, it makes your numbers smaller, and that's better. 180 divided by 9 be 20 times 10 is 200. All right, this next section, so 14 through 22, this is like the bread and butter of pre-calculus. Like this is what you absolutely need to do when you waltz out of pre-calc, right? We're going to draw a triangle and then answer the question. This is in quadrant 1. What goes across from the pi over 3? Square root of 3 over 2. This is 1/2. Now, I made you draw those. Your exam is multiple choice, so technically you don't have to, but I'm going to just strongly recommend that you do so you can get the right answer. All right, tangent is y over x. That would be, now you don't have to write this if you don't want to, but I just want to show it to you. It would be square root of 3 over 2 over 1/2, but what happens there? 2's cancel, you have square root of 3 over 1, which is just square root of 3. Cool. All right, negative pi over 6 would be in the 4th quadrant because you went backwards pi over 6. What goes across from the pi over 6? It's 1/2, but it's going to be negative 1/2. And then this side, square root of 3 over 2. Sine is the y value. Which one of those is the y value? Yeah, the negative 1/2. We did a Quizlet on this too. I feel like I had you guys do this one with groups. All right, 5/4, that is in the 3rd quadrant. For the pi over 4, both sides are square root of 2 over 2. Good, and they're both negative. Cosine is the x one. They're both the same, so it doesn't really matter. It's going to be negative square root of 2 over 2. And again, if you could answer that without drawing the triangle, I'm not grading work for this. It's just A, B, C, or D. But I still think it's a good idea to draw it.
How long is that going to walk?
It's okay.
2 hours.
All right. 3/4 is in quadrant 2. And again, it's your square root of 2 over 2 triangle. It's just the x value is negative. Cosecant, you're going to flip the y value. If you flip square root of 2 over 2,
Square root of two.
yeah, you can do that if you want, but the 2's are going to cancel and it is just square root of 2. I just recommend knowing that one because it ends up being a mess and it's a lot easier to just write square root of 2. All right, negative 7, 6. If you go backwards 7, 6, that's quadrant 2. Very good. You guys are saying it before I can even write it. That's awesome. Across from pi over 6 is a half. Down here is negative square root of 3 over 2. So cotangent is x over y. So look, I'll write it out if you don't want to, that's fine. But it's going to be this one over this one. So 2's cancel, negative square root of 3. And then 5/3 is in the fourth quadrant. Across from pi over 3, you have negative square root of 3 over 2. Other side's a half. Secant means you're going to flip the x value. If you flip 1/2, it is perfect. You guys are awesome. All right, these last 3 are not going to be triangles. They're going to be circles, okay? So pi is on the left, negative 1, 0. Tangent is y over x. That would be 0 over negative 1, which is just 0. When is it undefined? 0's on the bottom. And then that is hard, though, because 1 is one way and 1 is the other way, and it's confusing. All right. Pi over 2 is at the top, 0, 1. Sine is the y value, so just 1. And then 3 pi over 2 is at the bottom, 0, negative 1. Secant means you're going to flip the x value. We just said you can't divide by 0. So that's your undefined. All right, unit 9 was one of the harder units, but I make it like an easier question on here because it's multiple choice. I can't ask you to draw a graph. So we're just going to go and answer all these questions. If it bothers you that that 4 is out front, scribble it out and put +4 at the end. And then the only other thing we're going to need to do is factor what's inside of here. So it's going to be negative 3 sine, and I'm going to leave like a little blank to factor that and put the +4 at the end. You can leave the 4 out front. I've just noticed over the years it bothers people when it's out front. So if you scribble it out and put it at the end, that goes better. And you have to factor out a 1/3. You guys have been good with fractions this year. If you divide by 1/3, that's the same as multiplying by 3. Good. So just imagine distributing a 3 through here. That would be x minus 3 pi. If you're like, that was hard. First of all, that makes you a normal person. The only thing you won't be able to answer is the phase shift. You'll be able to get everything else without factoring it. Okay. Let me come back to the range because I feel like that's the harder one. Do you remember how to get the period? It's been a while. I'm going to tell you if you forgot, but I just want to see. Oh, good. Good memories. 2 pi over 1/3. Now, again, dividing by 1/3 is the same as multiplying by 3. So 2 times 3, 6. So 6 pi. Phase shift. It's backwards. It's left and right. So it's backwards. It went right 3 pi. Amplitude, you have to absolute value your -3, which is just 3. And then your vertical translation is 4, up 4. So let's go back to the range. Your center line is at 4, since that's where it got shifted to. And your amplitude is 3. So you take 4 and you add 3 and you subtract 3. So from 1 to 7. So you figure out where that center is. Do you remember the word problems we did with those? Like the temperature that goes up and down? Yeah. And the Ferris wheel that goes up and down? All right. These are your inverse trig. So it's backwards. All right. I'm going to draw this in quadrant 1 since it's positive. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So 3 goes there, 5 goes there. Ooh, what's the other side? 4. That is your work Then you answer the question. We want to do tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So 4/3. That's really a geometry problem. It just looks scary because of the arc in there that ends up bothering everybody. All right, arc cosine, and it's negative. That means it's going to be in quadrant 2. Here's your -1/2. Here's your square root of 3/2. What's your angle across from your square root of 3/2? Okay, but your answer is not pi/3. It's how far you rotated to get there. So 2 pi/3. All right, this one is tricky because the -1 kind of makes you think of the circle. But remember, for tangent and cotangent, it's going to be the triangle. It's negative, so it's in the 4th quadrant. What do the sides have to be so you end up with 1? Good. And it's just that this one's negative. That's why it ended up being negative. And so the angle's pi/4, but your answer is not pi/4 because you went backwards. So it's actually negative pi/4. Good. Because you went the opposite direction. Oh, that just means arc. You can either write arc cotangent or cotangent with the -1. They both mean inverse. It's just like another notation that means inverse. I like the arc better because I think it looks fancier, but that means the same thing. All right, arc sine, square root of 3/2. Sine is the y value, so here's your square root of 3/2. What is this angle across from it? Pi/3. And when you're in quadrant 1, that's your answer. This one I would rewrite. I think secant and cosecant are really difficult to deal with. Reciprocal of cosecant is sine. Reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. So I would rewrite it that way. And now it's the exact same thing we did here in 31. It's just instead of the square root of 3/2, it's the 1/2. So what's your angle across from pi/6? Cool. All right, remember all those identities that were super fun? So they're on here, but I made them the easy ones, okay? You can just state the answer, all right? Cosine over sine. Well, sine over cosine is the one everybody remembers for some reason. Sine over cosine is tangent. So cosine over sine is cotangent. What is your reciprocal of secant? Cosine? Tangent negative x, negative tangent x. The two that turn positive are the even ones, which are cosine and secant. All the rest of them go negative. The Pythagorean ones are hard. Those ones you kind of do just have to memorize. This one is cosecant squared. Maybe just look over the Pythagorean one. Do you remember the first one, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1? I think that's probably the one I put on there. All right, and then when it's 90 minus, you just add or remove a co, and this is why I harped on and on about you saying them correctly. This is cosecant, so if you just remove a co, it's secant. So the 90 minus, you just add or remove a co. All right, here we're getting into more recent material. This is unit 11, solving equations. What would you do to start solving this? +1, and then divide by square root of 2. Very good. So that would be square root of 2/2. And then you're ready to draw a picture. It's cosine, and this is positive. So cosine is positive in 1 and 4. You can either remember your ASTC, or the way I think of it is cosine is x. If it's positive, we had to go to the right. I don't know, that's kind of how I think of that. But what are your angles? Is pi/4. Good. I just didn't hear you. So you get 2 answers. The one in quadrant 1 is pi/4. And this is a matter of just knowing your unit circle. What's your 4th? Yeah, 7 pi/4. So again, like I put the equations on here, but I didn't give you any of those ones where you have to go around and around the circle or anything. I put easier ones on here. All right, for this one, you would add over the 1/3. and then square root. When you put a square root, you have to put plus or minus. Square rooting fractions always bothers everybody. You just do the numerator, do the denominator. So square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 3 is square root of 3. Now here's where this is tricky. And so if you get stuck, put the 1/2 somewhere and put the square root of 3 over 2 somewhere. If you back this up a step, it's going to be plus and minus 1/2 over square root of 3 over 2. But again, if you get stuck, it's either one way or the other way. You got a 50-50 shot. Now, what quadrants are we in? All of them. Good. So it's like the bow tie. Cotangent is x over y. So this is x, this is y. And so what's our angle? Because that's like the whole point. It's pi over 3. Good. And so you get all 4 of your answers from the unit circle that are thirds. So you basically just go around and do all the thirds. Pi over 3, 2 pi over 3. Oh my gosh, I love you guys. You're awesome. You know your unit circle is fantastic. A lot of it is the unit circle. I mean, that's sort of what pre-calc is. At least the second half of it. All right, and then this one's all solutions. So that's where you do like the plus 2 pi n or plus pi n or whatever it is. So for this one, you would add 1 and then divide by 2. Oh my gosh, it came out to a half. We need where sine is positive 1 and 2. And you can either, again, remember your ASTC, or you can remember like sine is the y value if that's positive. Oh, you have to go up. But anyway, the angle is pi over 6. So we have 2 separate answers. We're going to have pi over 6 plus 2 pi n. And then what's the one that's 6th in the second quadrant? Yeah, 5 pi over 6 plus 2 pi n. Again, it's multiple choice. Like you're going to have choices and you'll be able to narrow it down. Like you'll be like, hey, this one doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? Cool. All right. And then these last ones are our limits. When you're going to infinity, that's who's in charge here. So for the numerator, it's the 2x. For the denominator, it's the 2x squared. Why is it just 0? Like that's just things. Denominator's bigger. Perfect. This one's the same thing. Going to infinity, it's who's in charge here. You have a 9x squared and a 5x squared. So 9 over 5. It's just the coefficient. Yeah, so this feels more familiar because we like literally just did this. All right, here, if you plug in 2, I realize it says from the left, but you're going to plug in 2. 2 minus 7, negative 5 over 0. That means asymptote. Give me a number to the left of 2. 1. 1 minus 2 is negative, and negative 5 is also negative.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The left of 2 is, are we all still on board?
Yeah.
Did I mess up?
No.
Okay, hold on. Let's start from the beginning. If you plug in 2, 2 minus 7 is negative 5. That's a negative number. Are we all on board there? Okay, 2 minus 2 is 0. Give me a number to the left of 2. 1. 1 minus 2 is negative. Okay, and negatives cancel, so positive infinity. All right, this one, as a heads up, if you plug in negative 5, you are going to get 0 over 0. So this needs to be factored. It's an algebra problem that says limit in front of it. Okay, but I do get that factoring is harder for you guys because you went through COVID during all that and it was more difficult. So I get that it's harder for you. 3x squared is going to split 3x and 1x. 5 is 1 times 5. So now let's check. If you multiply the outsides, what do you get? 15x. Good. And then the insides, 1x to get 14 plus 15. So plus with the 5 minus 1. The denominator will be easier because it's just x and x. How would you split up 20? Yeah, four. Oh, you're even saying the symbols already, 4 and 5, and they're both gonna be positive. So these cancel, and then what's your last step? Plug it in. Okay, so if you plug in -5, that'll be -16 over -1, so 16.